watch it ride, smoke it green. No block, no drag, just pure machine. Come show us your truck, we'll make it pristine. We just wanna know, can your diesel uphold? Bring something dirty, we'll turn it to gold.
Hey there, it is Sunday, June 30th, 2024, and it's time for a little diesel after treatment Q&A by the DPF Guys. So welcome, thank you for joining us. Before either of us forgets, make sure you subscribe to the DPF Guys channel so you don't miss any of our future goodness. And if you can take 0.3 of a second to tap that like button, it helps a ton with all of the algorithms out there, especially YouTube. So if you don't know, we are DPF Guys based in Atlanta, Georgia. We focus 100% on all things diesel after treatment for anything with a diesel engine and an emission system. Most of our customers are big fleets, little fleets, mechanics, owner-operators, and of over-the-road equipment primarily, but we also service after treatment for diesel passenger vehicles such as Range Rovers, Mercedes sedans, BMW X3s, what else? Another one. Chevy Cruze is one that we see a bunch of. And of course, the medium duty pickup trucks, Ford, 350, 250, etc., Ram 2500, 3500. And of course, the smaller ones, the 150s and the Ram 1500s as well. And all of the off-road stuff, tractors, excavators, skid steers, earth movers, etc., as well as stuff that doesn't move, such as generators, pumps, rock crushers, the big tippers that are in the landfill, and what else you got out there. So if it's got a DPF, we can clean it. Important disclaimer here. You should always talk to a mechanic that you know and trust about any concerns you have with your engine or truck. And any pricing that I talk about here, I don't think I'm talking about pricing tonight, but I never know. Sometimes I do. May or may not apply to you and should only be used as a guideline and is not any form of official quote for any services by DPF Guys or anybody else for that matter. Okay, let's get started. Looks like we've got about 5 questions that came in through TikTok, and all of them are from TikTok. If you have any questions yourself, you can ask them during this live. I can see what's been coming in here. Hang on a second. Nothing here yet, but if you want to fire a question in here, I will catch it either now while I'm live, or we can address it at a future time, or text them to us. As always, you can text us at 404-999-1361, and we'll get those and respond to them and add them to our list of questions in the future. So this week, we will touch on a question such as, what is a one box? How about making your own DEF at home? How about using Alka-Seltzer to make DEF? What about just putting ammonia in my DEF tank? Lots of questions about DEF. And last but not least, can I just put ATF fluid in my diesel fuel as an additive? People ask it. So question number 1 from TikTok, what is a one box? So the Detroit Diesel one box is a cutting-edge emissions control system designed to meet the stringent demands of modern diesel engines. So imagine a single compact unit that integrates multiple components to reduce harmful emissions from heavy-duty trucks, and that's the one box in a nutshell. So the components are diesel oxidation catalyst. That's the first part that your exhaust flows through. That's the part that produces the needed heat to do a regeneration, either passively or actively. And it's first in line. And when you do a regen, a little extra diesel gets added to the exhaust, unburned, and that hits that catalyst and will bump the temperature up to close to 1,000 degrees. Sometimes it's a little bit below it or sometimes a little bit above it, but say around 950 to 1,100 degrees Fahrenheit. And that's what you need to burn the soot off of the filters during a regen. Next is the diesel particulate filter, or DPF. And that's the part that traps and collects particulate matter, soot, and ash. And it prevents these tiny particles from being released into the atmosphere. Periodic regeneration burns off accumulated soot, keeping the filter clean. Now, again, as an aside, keep in mind that when you do a regen, it's not magic. It's not Harry Potter technology that'll just make everything in the DPF go away, but it will reduce it substantially. And eventually that DPF gets full, much like a garbage can gets full, a vacuum cleaner bag gets full, and it needs to be emptied out. And that's what we do at DPF Guys. And then lastly, you have the selective catalytic reduction, or SCR. And that is the part that works with the urea-based solution known as diesel exhaust fluid, or DEF. And the SCR system converts nitrogen oxides, or NOx, into harmless nitrogen and water vapor, believe it or not. Once all of this is said and done, the only thing you should see coming out of your exhaust pipe is basically nitrogen and water vapor. Um, and that process is really crucial for meeting the NOx standards. Um, a little additional detail: the SCR, you can't see it because it's wrapped up in metal, in a canister, but it actually has two pieces in it. And one piece will convert the NOx into um, ammonia, NH3. And any of that ammonia is then um, converted by the ASC, which is the ammonia slip catalyst. That's the last part of the SCR. And that's what turns everything into nothing more than nitrogen and water. So, really, it's basically the DPF system on a Detroit truck, usually a Freightliner Cascadia with the DD13 or DD15 engine. DD stands for Detroit diesel. 13 and 15 is how many liters the engine is. And I have my opinions about the one box. It definitely works. It's a kind of a technological wonder. Um, Now, again, allegedly, this is kind of my theory on this is at uh, you may not know this, but Mercedes, or um, Daimler Benz owns Freightliner, which is why you'll see Sprinter vans sometimes that have a Freightliner logo on them, and sometimes they have a Mercedes logo on them, depending upon what dealership they came from. Um, and I've got to actually look this up and see when this happened. So, Daimler Benz bought Freightliner, and Volvo bought Mack. And the joke that I tell, I don't know if it's hilarious or not. That's why I'm a DPF guy, not a comedian. The joke I say is Mercedes bought Freightliner and said, huh, well, how can we make things more complicated and expensive? And they go, I know, let's put a one box on there and probably some other components. And Volvo bought Mac and said, hey, if it ain't broke, we're not going to fix it. And they left everything just as it was, or they improved it. And um, all these systems are function well. When you actually look at it, how long they go between failures, it's still pretty amazing with all the moving parts. But my opinion, the Volvo and Mac probably has a better, more robust after treatment system. The problem I have with the one box, I shouldn't say problem, but the issue you're going to have is, yeah, it's great. Everything is in one box. It's compact. It doesn't take up much room on the truck. Gives the manufacturer more room in the chassis to do other stuff, PTOs and whatever else you have, right? Um, can tuck it up nice and tight underneath the truck, and it's not going to bottom out on things. But uh, everything is built into that one box. Now, again, the DPF filters, the diesel particulate filters on a one box, can be taken out and cleaned. They can be taken out and replaced. But the DOC and the SCR are built in. So if anything happens with those, now rarely does something go wrong with the DOC. In fact, I don't think we've been doing this for over 5 years in Atlanta. I don't think I've seen a DOC in a one box fail. But I do see SCRs fail. And if the SCR goes bad and you have any other truck, you can replace the SCR. Now, it's not a cheap thing to do, but it's still less expensive than a whole one box. If you have a Freightliner Cascadia with a Detroit engine, and that one box goes out, in other words, the SCR fails, which often happens, especially in the 2014, 2015, 2016 Freightliners. That often happens. And it's not because of a bad design of the one box. There was an issue with that 2015 vintage Freightliner where the fuel mapping in the engine control module was incorrect, and it was dosing too much fuel. It was overheating the one box and was causing the SCRs to fail. As an aside, I wasn't going to touch on this right away, but I might actually spin this off as a separate video. So, um, important note: if you are a Freightliner owner And if you happen to own a 2014, 15, or 16 Freightliner, and it may affect other ones as well, but primarily the 14, 15, and 16. So listen up if you got a Freightliner with a DD13, DD15 engine and happens to be somewhere in that 2015 era. Um, the symptom that you want to look at is that the truck will run extremely well, usually, if it is bobtail or if it is basically empty on a flat road, lightly loaded, empty on a flat road where the engine isn't really laboring. But the minute that you've got 20, 30, 40,000 pounds in the back and you're going up a grade, the truck will start throwing codes that will usually be DEF quality, SCR efficiency, NOx conversion, something like that. And the problem with that is you get the DEF quality code, um, and what's the first thing you do is maybe you drain your def. You're thinking, "Oh, I've got bad def," or maybe you get a new def header, and that's $1,300 plus labor and everything else. None of those things would solve that. Basically, what you're seeing is the it indicates a failed or failing SCR. So if you've got a 2014, 15, 16 Freightliner Cascadia with a Detroit engine, and it seems to run really well if it's lightly loaded or bobtail, but the minute that it's hauling uphill, it starts to throw those SCR or those def quality codes. Um, Really, the only option you have is to replace your one box. There's some things we can do, um, such as start using a good fuel additive that really helps the diesel fuel combust more efficiently. Such as Clean Air Fleet is the one that we sell and recommend, but there's others out there. Um, I would stay away from any sort of fuel additive that is like will work with gasoline vehicles and diesel vehicles and things like that. Not that it's necessarily bad, but it's not going to give you the effect that you want. Use a good fuel additive, and it's kind of a band-aid, but it's something that can kind of, think of it as like a donut spare on your car. It's not designed to be a permanent solution, but it's enough to keep you rolling long enough to get the job done. I always tell people that if you do use a fuel additive, that'll give you enough time to set aside what you'll need to actually replace that one box. We do sell brand new one boxes. And if you would like to know more about that, please give us a text or a call, 404-999-1361. Um, so that was a very long answer to a short question, but that's what a one box is. And if you have a one box, before you spend a lot of time and money trying to fix it, just give us a call or a text, 404-999-1361. Let me kind of hear your story and see what we can do for you. All right, number two. This is crazy. I saw a couple of these come in, and uh, so apparently people are asking this and wondering this. So from TikTok, can't I just make my own def to save money? Now, um, uh, def fluid isn't terribly expensive. It's 15, $16 for a 2.5 gallon box. It's a couple bucks a gallon to, you know, uh, throw it in your truck at a truck stop. Um, but it is, to be honest here, it's theoretically possible. Just like it'd be theoretically possible to make your own diesel fuel, I imagine. You could probably, you know, drill a well and, refine it, whatever it is. But when it comes right down to it, um, it's more complex than mixing a few household chemicals, and it won't be cheaper. Um, but still, let's get into this and talk about what is DEF, and if you wanted to make your own DEF, what would you do? So it's a carefully controlled solution designed to meet specific purity and concentration standards to work effectively with the modern diesel engine selective catalytic reduction, or SCR, system. So here's a breakdown of what's involved with making DEF and why it's generally recommended to purchase it from certified suppliers. So what is DEF? Diesel exhaust fluid, or DEF, or in Europe they call it AdBlue, is a non-toxic solution composed of exactly 32.5% high purity urea and 67.5% deionized water. Deionized water is more than just distilled water. It's actually distilled water where they get any sort of minerals out of it as well. Um, and it is injected into the exhaust stream of diesel vehicles to reduce nitrogen oxide or NOx emissions. converting them into harmless nitrogen and water through the SCR process. So why would, it's just water and urea. Why would making your own DEF be that difficult? So first and foremost, purity requirements. So DEF must be extremely pure. And the urea is often referred to as automotive grade urea. And you can farmers use urea on their fields to get nitrogen in their fields, but that wouldn't work because there's contaminants in there, metals, other substances that can damage your system, um, and and everything has to be mixed very precisely, exactly 32.5% urea, 67.5% water is critical to the DEF, how DEF would function correctly. The urea has to be dissolved. It's actually, you can purchase it as a crystal. It needs to be dissolved 100% and evenly to avoid crystallization, which can clog your SCR system. Um, and deionized water is, uh, you know, more than just distilled water, more than just tap water. It's deionized. There's no minerals or impurities that could damage your system. And if you use ordinary tap water, it has minerals and contaminants that are going to jack up your system. Um, Storage and handling, DEF must be stored in a clean, sealed container to avoid contamination. And should be kept at temperatures between 12 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 11 C for those of you watching in parts of the world that use the metric system, or 86 degrees Fahrenheit or 30 C to maintain its effectiveness and prevent degradation. I always think about DEF as kind of like wine. If you keep it in the right conditions, it'll last a long time. But the minute it gets too hot, too cold, gets too much air in it, it begins to spoil and degrade. So let's go through the recipe of making DEF at home. I feel like Walter Wright here. I am the one who knocks. So the steps. So if you want to make your own DEF, here's a general outline in the process. And remember, this is for informational purposes only, and commercial production of you know uh, DIY DEF is not recommended due to the reasons I just talked about a second ago. So first and foremost, you would have to acquire high quality lab grade or automotive grade urea, and it can be rather challenging to find that. And prepare your deionized water, and then you need to measure the urea in the water precisely. So for every 1 liter of DEF, you would need 325 grams of urea and 675 grams of deionized water. Slowly add the urea to the water, stirring continuously to ensure that it dissolves completely. So continue stirring the solution until it's clear and all the urea is 100% dissolved. You would then need to check the concentration using a refractometer or similar device to ensure that it is exactly 32.5% urea. Filter the solution, remove any undissolved particles and contaminants, and then store it in a clean, sealed container. Make sure you keep air off of it, keep the temperature right, everything else. Um, and so, what I found is buying just the raw urea to make a typical 2.5 gallon container of DEF will cost you, just the urea, not your time and not everything else, will cost you about $26 to make a 2.5 gallon container. And since you can buy a single 2.5 gallon container in one-off quantities for about $16-17, if you make DEF yourself, you're going to be spending $10 more, not counting the time and effort and everything else. So it's cheaper to buy it off the counter or over the counter, off the shelf at your Walmart, at your Quick Trip, at your TA, wherever you get it from, than it is to make it. So while it's possible to make your own DEF, the complexities and risks involved just don't make it practical for most users. Purchasing DEF from a certified supplier ensures that it meets all the necessary standards, keeps your SCR system running smoothly and efficiently. And if you're running a fleet of heavy duty vehicles, the peace of mind and compliance assurance of using commercial DEF far outweighs the potential savings of DIY efforts. And, realistically, there are no savings. It'll cost you more to do it yourself. All right. Another DEF question here. And this one cracked me up. And you can look for this. I should probably find this video and share it. So from TikTok, I saw a video where a guy made his own DEF by putting a couple of Alka-Seltzer into water, and it worked just fine. This really goes uh, along with the idea of don't believe everything you hear on the internet. Um, Even with myself, I check things carefully. I I don't want to lead you astray. I don't have any incentive to not tell you the truth here. But again, even what I tell you, you want to double check it or ask me by calling 404-999-1361 and just say, "Hey, are you full of crap or is this real?" So, um, the Alka-Seltzer deaf guy, and there's always, again, you always hear, "Ah, I use it, it's great. I don't understand. It's fun," whatever. I don't all these people use something or do something and it works great, but they never have a follow-up video showing that. So number 1, let's go over what the heck is Alka-Seltzer made of anyway? Well, aspirin, which is for your headache when you're hungover, um, a pain reliever, anti-inflammatory agent. Um, so 325 milligrams of aspirin per tablet. That's for your aching head when you've had too much to drink the night before. Citric acid. That provides the acidity and contributes to the effervescent reaction when combined with sodium bicarbonate. So um, that would be just like when you mix vinegar with baking soda to make your science fair science fair volcano or whatever it is. Anything acid, when it combines with the third ingredient, which is the baking soda, will then fizz up, and that's what Alka-Seltzer does. The reason they use citric acid instead of some sort of acetic acid, which would be your vinegar, is that it tastes better, but it does the same thing. So when you plop, plop, fizz, fizz, what makes it fizz is the sodium bicarbonate, which is the baking soda. And then, so the water will begin to dissolve the baking soda and the citric acid, they combine, and that makes the fizzing. And also, the baking soda acts as an antacid to neutralize stomach acid. So, guess what? We just talked about what's in DEF. Do you remember what's in DEF? Bonus points if you do. It's nothing but urea, 32.5%, and water, purified deionized water at 67.5%. So nowhere in DEF is aspirin, citric acid, or baking soda. So, um, you know, well, I should warn you that putting anything in your DEF tank that isn't DEF can cause all sorts of expensive problems. Um, I think there would be so little contaminants that are going into it, it probably wouldn't hurt anything, but it's not going to work. So, if you think you can save some money and be clever and just, you know, dump some water in your DEF tank and throw in a couple of aspirin and magically make your own DEF that way, the short answer is no, as in NO, nine yet. Um, you can't make your own DEF by putting Alka-Seltzer in your DEF tank. The more you know. All right. What is question number 4? We're getting close to the end here. Ha! Another DEF question. Can't I just put ammonia in my DEF tank? Um, so DEF is made of just urea and deionized water and nothing else. Urea is not ammonia. Um, Ammonia is a component of urea, but urea is manufactured by combining carbon dioxide and ammonia under high pressure and temperature to make the urea that would then they use to actually manufacture the DEF. So don't use anything other than DEF in your DEF tank because it will not only not work, it will throw off the ratios and will cause the DEF to not work. It will likely cause expensive damage to your truck. So dumping a bottle of ammonia into your DEF tank isn't going to solve anything, and the odds are not in your favor because it'll probably make things worse and not better. And the $16 you saved on that 2.5 gallons of DEF is going to cost you 1,000 times that in potential repairs. So just stick with the DEF out of the pump or the bottle. Just make sure that it's fresh and not diluted or old and spoiled. Anyway, so what do we got here? Down to our last question. Oh, this is another additive one. Okay. This is from TikTok as well. Can't I just dump ATF, automatic transmission fluid, into my diesel fuel tanks instead of all of those expensive fuel additives? Now, I don't know if this is necessarily expensive, but it is an additive designed specifically for a diesel engine. Now, if you actually look at um, what ATF is, it's automatic transmission fluid. Nowhere in there does it say diesel additive or fuel additive. So just by looking at the name of it, you'd automatically say, no, that's not a good idea. But why is it a bad idea? So why is adding ATF to diesel fuel not recommended? Number one, potential engine damage. Um, so ATF is not designed for combustion. The additives and compounds in ATF are meant for use in transmissions, hence transmission fluid, not engine. It doesn't say engine fluid, right? So these engines can leave deposits, clog injectors, damage fuel system components over time. And also, uh, you don't want to have ash in anything that is combusting in your engine. So, guess what? ATF has high levels of ash forming compounds that will create harmful deposits in the combustion chamber and the exhaust system, leading to increased emissions and engine wear and DPF damage. Um, so, no, don't put it in there. And of course, as an aside, the same thing with engine oil. The ash that shows up in your DPF, most of that are um, ash and metal components from motor oil. So the better your motor oil, the lower your ash content, the longer your DPF will last. Hence the like AMSOIL full synthetic is is a really good thing to use. Um, Number two, emissions systems damage. The DPF is equipped with advanced emissions control systems. Um, so you burn ATF, it's just going to produce more soot and ash. That's going to clog up your DPF, reducing the efficiency and leading to costly repairs or making it so you have to come see me way too often. And the sulfur and other contaminants in ATF will damage your SCR, and that is an expensive thing to fix. And especially if you have a one box that we talked about just a moment ago, that SCR is built in. And if you happen to um, damage your SCR, destroy your SCR by putting ATF into the fuel tank, well, guess what you got to do? Buy a new one box, buy a new SCR. There's also some legal concerns about using ATF, but I'm not too worried about those. Um, and the fact is, there are far better alternatives. I mean, not that ATF it should be used ever, but if you're like, hey, I want to put something in my tank to make my diesel fuel uh, better cetane, I want to keep my injectors clean, I want to go longer between DPF cleanings. Just put this in. That's what it's designed for. Put ATF fluid Put ATF in your transmission where it belongs. Put fuel, just like I wouldn't put fuel additive in my transmission. Why would you put transmission fluid into your fuel? Um, Now, if you want to learn more about the additive, or if you'd like to order some, please text the word additive, ADDITIVE, to 404 999 1361. 404 999 1361. So it was fairly common practice to add ATF to diesel fuel way in the past. Definitely not advised in any modern diesel engine. And I'm talking about anything that's, 2000 anything. If you had a 1980s truck, you could pretty much put anything in the tank, and it would just gobble it up and wouldn't care. So that is, guess what? I said 5 questions, and that's exactly what we have. If anybody has any questions for me that's watching this live or watching it after it's live, I'm going to quick check to see if we got anything. Nothing in here yet. Please feel free to leave me a message down below. and I will do my best to answer it. So there you have it. Your questions, my answers. Thank you to everybody for watching. Please hang on a second here. Leave your questions below. If you're not subscribed to our DPF Guys YouTube channel, please do that. Just takes a second to subscribe, and that way you don't miss any goodness here. And definitely drop me a like on whatever you're seeing here. That helps the algorithm and also helps my dainty self-esteem. As always, you can text your questions to 404-999-1361. And for anybody that has messaged me looking for the link to order the Clean Air Fleet additive, we will have that posted soon. We're having some issues with our e-commerce site, and that has been rectified. So remember to subscribe. If you are not following us on TikTok, I certainly hope you do, because we do a lot of fun stuff there. And thank you for watching, and see you next week. All right.
The skills, the might to get your truck rolling clean into the night. Throttle up, feel that clean airflow. Our service so slick, your ride seals the show. DPF Guys, we got the fifth so fine. Hit the road with confidence, now the world's your shrine. Bring in that rig, let's get on track. Breathe easy with no sooty black.